And we are back. Belky, I think this is episode 29.
Give it like a plus or minus, I was going to say. Like plus or minus 4.
Plus or minus, it could be 4 at this point, yeah. We could be at 33. We could be, I don't know, still at 19 if you do your math that way. But we're here. This is episode something with Camila, our friend Camila Lupi, from freshman year. That's where we first connected. I mean, we're going to get into your story, but basically the outdoors girl comes to Brown. We meet, crazy experiences there. You kind of go towards a path that's corporate, and now maybe you're circling back. We're going to really, I'm going to use this dive deep. I say it a lot, but it's relevant because Camila scuba dives. So,
you know, you got 2 novice scuba divers here.
I know. This might turn into a scuba lesson.
So, if you could have seen Dylan, we went scuba diving, and it'd probably been, 3 years since you had last gone?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
If you were just there for him to describe the panic attacks he was having underwater, I mean, I don't even want to go into it. You had to have been there. I'm sorry.
Camila, you know how, because I was reading your blog when you were in the Galapagos, and you said you're like 10 meters down and you ran out of air just without knowing. And if that was me in that moment, I for sure would have panicked and then probably swam down instead of up. Like, I was an absolute mess. So you could turn into our Nelson, who was our scuba instructor.
No way. Our boat driver was named Nelson. That's funny.
It's got to be the same guy going around.
Same guy for sure.
So, where was this? You ran out of air?
Yeah. So it actually happened to me twice, but I wrote about it that one time.
I don't like that.
So I was the summer between sophomore and junior year, I got a funding from school to go to the Galapagos with the lab that I worked with in undergrad. And basically we do like a bunch of field research there for like marine biofield research. And I was kind of just there like as a little undergrad assistant. But I mean, it was an amazing experience, but basically, yeah, we scuba dove like 3 to 4 times a week, like full days, like really long dives, like an hour and a half underwater 4 times every day.
Sorry.
Anyway, I one time was like not checking my air. I was like trying, like down there, busy working. Like we basically were doing construction work underwater.
Jeez.
Lots of explanation behind that. And all of a sudden it felt kind of like it feels essentially like you're breathing through a straw all of a sudden. Like it's not that the air completely stops, but you're just like, ooh, like it's kind of hard to get some air in. And I look down and like the meter's at 0. And I just like swim over to my dive buddy and like tap her really hard. And she just gave me her second
I forget all the signals and stuff.
And it was all fine. But yeah.
I'm laughing because, so you said you were diving like 3 to 4 times a week doing literally construction or engineering underwater. We went like 2 times and got the bends, I swear.
You guys got the bends? How?
No.
Something.
Belky's exaggerating. We had some
exaggerating. We couldn't get out of bed.
That's a whole adventure. I don't want to detract from Camila's.
I want to hear about that at some point, though.
Yeah, another time, I guess.
We'll probably come back to it because we kind of want to go chronologically, at least where we connected in the start. And I didn't even realize before, but you kind of knew Henry before this, but not really, right? Like
not really. Like we met a couple times at school, but like I guess just like never crossed that much.
That's what's such a like bummer to me is, okay, yeah, we crossed paths a few times, right? I'm sure we were hanging out in similar circles, but like everyone is so, this is like not just a Brown or a college thing, but like people are like so, what's the word? Clicked.
Oh, I know.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, and you're not allowed to like expand your horizons. And I just, having left school and like not I don't see anybody anymore, but like not abiding by that like norm is, I don't know. That's one of my big issues. It was really bad in high school too. Yeah. Like with lunch tables and who sits where, and it's the same every single day. And God forbid you go and talk to a different lunch. Like,
dude, lunch tables were stressful. I don't know, Camila, if you had this, but there were always like 8 seats at the table, right? And the first, like the coolest 5 kids in the friend group, they had their spots, like that was secure. But the the bottom three, it was fierce competition because there were usually 5 people vying for those spots. And I can remember it was a little stressful. But what was high school like for you, Camila? Was it because you're from Miami?
Yeah.
Poor old
high school. I mean, honestly, yeah, you still got those clicks for sure. I went to like a big public high school in my neighborhood. And I don't know, a lot of the people I'd like grown up with, I was also like, it was a huge school, it was a magnet school, so we had different programs, and I guess it kind of got like a little smaller based on that. But yeah, so one of my best friends, I've known her since I was 2, and we never went to the same school until high school. So she and I kind of just like stuck together throughout high school. Like, I've always been someone who has like very few but close friends. Like, I'm not a big group person. Like, I even tried that out in college for a bit, like big group of friends. And I've just never, like, that's just not how I roll. That's like not how I connect with people. So high school was pretty much me and my closest friend, like hanging out on our own, like watching all these other cliques. Anytime we tried to like hang out with anyone else, it was like, why are you here? And I'm like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the same way. I know a couple of our friends, they'll have like the huge friend groups. I know you were in Theta, so I'm assuming that's maybe the bigger experience that you're getting towards. But I just like having like 5 tight friends, and so freshman year, because your best friend did not come to Brown. So what was that like leaving her for the first time?
Yeah, it was weird, and definitely like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like, because I'm not only have I like just had few friends, but they're all from different places. So like, it's like me and my best friend from growing up, me and my best friend from like gymnastics, I was a gymnast, or like me and my best friend from somewhere else. And like, sometimes I'd try to bring people together, like birthday parties and things like that. But suddenly I was just put into this, like, I don't know, like an environment where, one, I didn't know anyone going to Brown, like coming in. And yeah, I don't know. Everyone was just kind of, I mean, you guys know, and I'm sure this is not just a Brown thing too, like the whole scramble for first couple weeks of freshman year of like trying to meet as many people as possible. And just like, I was just trying to be in like any friend group I could, like thinking that was how I was going to feel comfortable and like feel at home there. But yeah, I don't know. Nothing. I mean, I made great friends at Brown, but there's like, to be honest, there's nothing like the friends that I like grew up with. Like, they're still the ones I'm closest to.
I'm wondering if it's like, it's not just a Brown thing. It's a freshman college thing, going away from home. It's like so much desperate. It's like animals. If you go out on like a Thursday, or like, it is crazy. This was one of my.
I remember like crew parties were just or football parties were always miserable, but people are like, no, we just gotta shove as many freshmen in and see what happens.
It's like. It must have been desperation, because by senior year, that was gone, at least from the seniors. They're like, oh, we found our 3 people, and like, that's enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's also like a growth thing, right? So like, I definitely feel like freshman year, my focus wasn't like, okay, let me meet a bunch of people and see who I click with and connect with. Like, I was just like, let me find kind of like any group of people who will like take me in almost. Like, it sounds so ridiculous saying it now, but like thinking back on it, that's what it was. And yeah, by senior year, you're like, no, like I realized that that's not what it's important at all. But it felt like everyone was making these big groups of friends. And like, I did feel that pressure to just like make a group of cool friends. And it didn't matter if I really had a lot in common with them or not. Like, I could fake it. And that definitely, like, I did that for a while, I feel like, or sometimes here and there. And like, it never felt good. So yeah, by senior year, I had like my few close friends. I wasn't really part of a group at all. And that's just how I liked it. And I just got more comfortable with that. Like, that was fine.
Yeah, it was one of those times where like you just get thrown into your floor. Like, we had our floor, we were on the same floor, Camila and I. That's why we knew each other. And that's what was awesome, was like everyone there, even if you ultimately wouldn't click, like a lot of personalities just, it doesn't make sense for you to get along. But like, you find within each, like Belky, we have our friends from still freshman year that we hang out with a lot. But it was cool. And then sophomore, junior senior year, everything starts getting siloed. Everyone starts kind of finding their own. But it was pretty fun, just kind of, or at least for me, freshman year, our unit was pretty close, so that was cool. But I am curious because with the freshman unit, like, did you, because you were kind of having some coping, like trying to figure it out with just the new pressures of college, like, and we don't have to get into it, but what was that like for you? Because I feel like a lot of people experience like just different
that transition difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, you've had Facebook posts before too, and we don't have to get into it.
Oh my God, I'm actually very open about it. Yeah, I know what you're referring to. So like, I talk about this a lot, and I feel like I'm still even like finding the words to really describe it. But I kind of explained to you, like, I went to this like really big public high school first of all in Miami, which like Miami is just a very different city from like the Northeast. Like that whole transition to me, I feel like in high school, I went from just like, I had this whole attitude of like, oh, I belong in the Northeast. Like I need to get away from Miami for no reason. Like I just, I was being like a 17-year-old, like deciding to be bitter about where I was from. And I don't know, I got to Brown, and, not everyone, this isn't like everyone at all, but a lot of people that I started meeting, they're like from the Northeast. A lot of them went to, if not like private schools and like prep boarding schools, and kind of were a little more used to like that culture. And like what I mean by that culture is just, I had never really been, I don't want to say competitive. And, people say like Brown is the chill Ivy. I don't know.
Which I don't think is true at all.
Yeah. Well, see, I think that you can say it is the chill Ivy, but look what you're comparing it to. So it's like, just because it's the chill Ivy does not mean it's a chill school.
Right.
Like, and that was, I don't know, I was around, of course, a lot of like very type A perfectionist people. And I don't say that in a bad way. Like that's how some people are, and that's totally fine. I was not used to that. Like I was not used to kind of just this like high pressure environment. I mean, I was obviously like a good student in high school and I did well, but it was just a complete change. And I guess like not having my friends around, like not having like, my family's Cuban. Like I'm very Hispanic, although I know that you would never guess that by looking at me. So like I fit in very well with a lot of the demographic at Brown appearance wise, but culture wise, it was completely different. And like no one would have known that either just by looking at me. So I guess like I'm kind of rambling, but that's like, there were just a lot of different things that were coming into play that I just wasn't coping well. And I also was like, didn't know a lot. Like, I feel like at 18, I didn't know myself that well. And so I started kind of trying to like control the situation. And like, I was like really, really just like dove into like schoolwork and stuff, which is fine. But then I also, I developed an eating disorder, and I struggled for the first couple years at Brown, but really freshman year, like, with an eating disorder. And it was in the end, like a control thing. Like it wasn't, like a lot of people hear about eating disorders and they think like it's a body image thing or like pressure on women's bodies. And not that that's not part of it, but I think that really in the end, it was like, I was trying to have control in a place where I just felt like I didn't have my close friends. I didn't have my family. I didn't have the culture. And like everyone around me was so like perfectionist, like at school, at like, I don't know. I met a lot of people, especially girls, like I, hate to say the stereotype, but it's a little bit true, who were like very strict with themselves about like what they ate and like being healthy and working out all the time. And it kind of all came together. It was like this perfect life thing. And I felt like I was already athletic and I liked being healthy. So that was something I could be good at, like that was like, and I say that with like a thinking of like, I know how that sounds now, but at the time, yeah, it was like my way of coping, which was like an unhealthy coping mechanism.
It's interesting. Like what you say is so pertinent. And I tell people this all the time, like, no, Brown is not a competitive place in the sense that, I'm creating like I did physics and music and like engineering, and Dylan does business, and like everybody is, you can't compete in that sense. But like you say, the people that are there largely are type A, perfectionist, competitive type from high school, that competitiveness manifests in every single other way. Every way, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then junior year rolls around and it's like competitiveness in the job market, it was crazy. It was crazy. So it doesn't surprise me that you were longing for control over something, because it seems like everyone at Brown has it under control.
Yeah.
I just saw you running a lot freshman year, and I'm like, oh, Camila, that's awesome. Like, I wish I was that active and fit and stuff like that. And then just everyone, there's a facade, and there's always something under the surface with everyone. So it is weird, even though it is chill, like you say. It's still high pressure regardless.
So Camila, how then did you turn? Because like Dylan, I've seen some of these Facebook posts. Like, how did you turn those negative emotions, energy, and habits into like positive things that you now practice? I know it takes a long time. I've done the same. I've had crippling anxiety in elementary school, and it took me years to get to a point where like I could control those emotions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I mean, wow, like the whole journey towards, like, I guess you could call it recovery, is long, and it doesn't really end. Like, I would even still say, like, to this day, like, I struggle with like aspects of my eating disorder, and like it doesn't fully ever go away, and like that's fine. But I would say, like, looking back, so like freshman, sophomore year, when it was like worse, to now. So it's kind of funny, because when people ask me about recovery, the one thing I have to say, and like, you know, take this as it sounds, is I think the biggest thing for me personally in recovery was going abroad. And I don't mean that to sound like I had to get away from Brown in order to recover, but I, junior spring, went abroad to Sydney, Australia, and had the best time. Like, I had the best abroad experience. I just loved it. I was like, it was just a semester in, it was at University of New South Wales, like a pretty big school. I was living like in the dorms with like the Australian students and some abroad students. So like I made a really, really close friend who was also abroad, and we're like still best friends to this day, like closer than like me and some of my friends from Brown. And I don't know, there was just a completely different culture there. Like, everyone was really smart.
Everywhere outside the US, there's a completely different culture when it comes to like work ethic, job market, like.
Yeah. So they, like, these Australian students, like, there was a really big school for engineering. So a lot of them were engineers. So they're smart kids. Like, they were really smart people, and like, you know, they worked, but there was just one thing, the best example I have of this, I never once heard one of those students say, I'm stressed. Like, even exams, they're like, yeah, I got to study for my exam that I have, but I never heard like, I'm so stressed. Like, and so it was just it was a really great experience for me. I was like, I wasn't like, it's funny because in like, when you talk about eating disorders and recovery, you talk a lot about, you know, like therapy and mental health and nutrition and doctors. And like, I had none of that in Australia. What I had was like friends. I was just had a semester where I could kind of like lay back. I was really happy. Like, I was going to the beach a lot, and I was scuba diving, like things I love. And I was like still working out and still kind of like being healthy. It was just like a whole holistically healthy way of living. And then when I came back for senior year, I like just made a couple changes of like how I was living at Brown. Like, I got like my own apartment that was like a quieter space and things like that. And I kind of, I don't know, that really got me into health, like holistic health. So if we talk about like kind of like what I know maybe we'll get into like what I'm doing now a little more, but that just really got me into this idea of like health is, and I'm sure it sounds kind of common sense, way more than just like eating right and working out. And like, it encompasses so much. And yeah, that's a little bit of how I just like kind of pulled myself out of it, kind of realized like there, like, especially my semester abroad just showed me like, there is a place for me where it's not just like this high competitive environment all the time, which I was just not thriving in. Like, some people, I would consider myself competitive. I mean, we all went to Brown. I think we all have an element of that, but I just don't thrive as much in that, like, around that kind of like perfectionism all the time, if that makes sense.
Same. That's why we're making this podcast. And it's not perfect.
I think I veered from the question, but essentially going abroad and then, getting just like pulling myself out of that. And
I do think it takes like leaving the US at some point or some degree, seriously, to like figure out just how insignificant so many things we do are. It sounds like you obviously had the fortune to do that. I had the fortune of being able to do that at a young age. I think a lot of people don't figure that out till like 35 or 40 when they finally get out of the rat race. What do you got, Dylan?
Well, because
see, you thinking
you didn't. I'm just listening. All right. I know you didn't. I know. Is this usually lagging, the video is good?
Yeah.
Dylan, get it together here.
All right. You know, the audio's fine.
I know we have 3 microphones going on Zencastr. I know you're working
3 microphones.
On a tablet.
I have a tablet recording this. All right, I'll upgrade that at some point. I'm sorry. Just deal with the lag for 2 seconds. You can hear me.
You're going to have to type your question. I can't. We can't get it.
Breaking up there.
You can't even hear me. Oh, no. Belky, no. Hold on. Hold on. Let me turn on a fan. Belky, you talk.
Okay, he's gone. I want to bring up a quote. It's in a similar vein to that Facebook post. You said, and sorry, this is going a bit back to like beating the odds and beating these things. You said, quote, "It's not as easy as telling yourself to love yourself and expecting your emotions to follow. It's years of tough work, and what follows is so worth it, so freeing." And I think that's so incredibly true, that so much of what we do is like, you're feeling this way. Okay, just love yourself more. It's Band-Aid solutions.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is like, it takes 2 years, it takes 3 years, it takes leaving the US, it takes 10 years to like finally figure out how to regulate emotions like that are so hardwired in human nature. Like, everyone has these, and it's so difficult to try and like reign over them. Are you back, Dylan?
I don't know. I'm just waiting until you tell me I'm back. I can hear you fine. Oh.
He's not back.
Why don't you text me what you want to say, and then I'll say it.
Well,
poor
this is so sad. I'm sorry. I think I closed the door.
No, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is it's going to be a good excuse for him to go out and finally buy a laptop.
Why do you not have a laptop? What happened to did you break it too?
No. He can't even respond. He uses a Surface Pro or something, and he's trying to run all these different programs on it, and it's got 2 gigabytes of RAM.
Oh.
No.
Why don't you leave and come back?
All right.
I see him glitching. Okay, I want to ask. Oh no. Can you still hear me, Camila?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hear you.
I want to ask you, based on what I just said, in the fact that Dylan, Camila, based on the fact that these things, I feel like you have figured out how to like decrypt your human hardwiring, which is telling you to be all these negative things. Do you feel like I know you also said that this is an ongoing battle, but do you feel more now like you have this sense of inner peace, or you've found that inner peace?
I mean, definitely a lot more than I had, a few years ago. So a lot of what I said there was like a lot of the journey, I guess you could say, to recovery was, again, it wasn't really just about like talking about the food or the obsessions with like food and exercise, or even talking about like what I'm trying to control. Like, like you said, it was like a lot of work on just like underlying things. And I, at the time, just didn't know. Like, I knew I didn't feel good. Like, I felt off. Like, I wanted to control, but like, what is that about? And so that's like the whole thing of like, everyone should go to therapy. Like, it's funny because like it's become a thing. Like, everyone could go to therapy, but it's true. Like, everyone has a level of that. And I don't even know if you could say, or if maybe some people can, but to say that you've found the inner peace, I definitely find pockets of it way more frequently than I did. And I think that like inner peace change, like what that is probably changes throughout the course of your life. But I'm definitely like have found much more contentment with just like being with myself and being by myself. And like, I think another thing for me that was big was I felt like I was so out of control in other aspects of life, like in terms of, just in terms of, I don't know, even like we could talk about like career stuff, like had no idea what I was doing there. Like, didn't know so much, and that like freaked me out. And I didn't even know that at the time. It wasn't like a conscious thing like, oh, because I'm freaked out about career and other life things, like this is how I'm going to control it. It's like looking back now. And even now, like currently, sometimes when my struggles will come up a little bit again with like eating disorder struggles or thoughts or things like that, it's always at a time when I'm feeling more uncertain about social life, relationships, career. Like, my struggles with control and eating disorder tries to mask that. Like, it's just because I'm trying to take control of something. And I think that is the case. And other people, like, they have their own things. So it may not be an eating disorder, but I have several friends who like are very focused on what others think of them. And they'll go through periods of time where they're really upset because they feel like someone doesn't like them, or relationship this, or they'll try to hang on to just the opinions of others. And I personally think that that's another way to kind of take control and mask other things about like yourself and what's going on there. So yeah, I mean, that again veered from your question a little bit, but I think that it's just kind of finding these pockets, and instead of inner peace, it's almost like, for me, it's like just getting to know myself better and keep going with that, like the quote unquote years of tough work. Like, there are still years of work, hopefully, and maybe not as tough, but they're there.
Right. I could not agree more on the importance of traveling alone. I think it's very scary, right? It's very scary to do for the first time, especially coming from a place or a household or wherever that maybe you didn't travel much. But I cannot tell you, like, I could learn more 3 weeks traveling alone than anything I could possibly be taught in school or at like a university, right? Like, the being pushed into the unknown to like think on your toes and figure stuff out yourself is, I think, highly, highly underestimated.
Yeah.
It was going to Australia. Did you travel there alone? Was that kind of your first experience headed out into the world alone?
No, not at all, actually. So I'm trying to think. So my first, right after senior year of high school, do you know what Outward Bound is? Have you heard of
I
Outward
don't.
Bound?
Fill me in.
Yeah, so Outward Bound, it's a company that basically leads like outdoor trips for all ages, all groups of people. It actually started, I think it honestly started like in 19 something to take like juvenile delinquent kids out into the wilderness and like teach them like how to rough it. But it has evolved into this like great program. They have trips all over the world. And I did a trip. It was 2 weeks backpacking in the Sequoia Kings Canyon in California, so in the high Sierras.
Oh, cool.
And that was my first time. Like, I signed up for the trip a week and a half before it started. So a lot of the participants had signed up like months before. I basically, after graduating, was feeling like kind of bored and antsy at home. And I decided I wanted to do something quote unquote cool. Like, I was like 18. I was like, I need to get out of here. So I signed up for this trip. and I traveled out to California alone. And yeah, I had this like incredible 2-week experience backpacking. And, that was with a group of 10 people. So I wasn't backpacking alone, but I traveled out there alone, didn't know anyone. And actually just like really in those 2 weeks made some friends that I still talk to even to this day.
You do? You keep in touch with them?
Yeah, some of them. So that was pretty cool. And then after that, my summer in the Galapagos, I was down there with one other undergrad who was working with me, and then the grad student and the professor that we worked with. But so we were living and working on one of the islands of the Galapagos, but I took a weekend or like a week-long trip to one of the other islands by myself because it just didn't work out for the other undergrad to come with me. So, I did that alone, took the boat over alone, got a hostel alone, just like did all that kind of stuff. And then, since then I've done, Australia.
Can I ask you really quick one question about that? Because it's not something I can relate to. It's something I talk about a lot with my sister. Is how did you feel, especially in the Galapagos, that back half of that trip, like you just mentioned, how did you feel doing that stuff alone as a young woman? Right? Like I feel like I could take that boat and I can go to the hostel and be perfectly safe in my skin. Was that scary?
Yeah. So, that's definitely something I've thought about and talked about. Even like I did a backpacking trip with my mom once, and she was even a little nervous about just being like 2 women backpacking, even though it wasn't alone. But in the Galapagos, I will say, I think if I had been on mainland Ecuador, somewhere in South America, I definitely would have thought about it more. To be honest, I will say like the Galapagos, by that point, I had lived there for a few weeks to maybe almost 2 months by that point. And I felt a lot safer there. I felt like first of all, I also speak the language, so that made me feel safer. And I don't know, I just got a feeling like the Galapagos was it was a different culture. There's not a ton of crime there, at least. Don't quote me on that. Maybe I'm wrong. And there is, but not that I witnessed or like felt really. So I felt pretty safe doing that there. But that's for sure something that I've thought about when thinking about wanting to travel more in South America, potentially alone, just because I don't really have anyone to travel with right now. But
right. I find myself, and then we got to cut because Dylan's texting me frantically. I find myself telling people often that, human beings, like people around the world, are just nicer than they're given credit for, in news articles, on TV, whatever. Obviously a lot of that's coming from this blind spot that I can kind of do anything safely. But it sounds like you kind of found, once you became comfortable with the community you were involved with in the Galapagos, you realize like it's not such a scary place. That's obviously painting with a broad brush, but I just find that kind of interesting.
Yeah. Honestly, maybe like in retrospect, I'm like, maybe I should have thought about that a little more, like be traveling alone as a woman. Like I was more focused on like the hostel lost power. And I was like, oh no, it's going to be naivety really hot.
Of you. Okay. So Dylan is texting me that he can hear us perfectly and he can't speak, which I love.
I don't even,
he's back.
I hear you.
Oh, I just haven't been talking. I've just been absorbing it all. I thought
Why
you couldn't hear me.
Why don't we break? You're going to refresh your thing, and then let's come back and talk about job and the job market and corporate life.
Yeah. Great. All right. Let's see if the ballpark works.
You got to get it together.
Oh, all right. See you in a few. Holy Camila, I wish, you would never know just listening to the podcast.
Can I explain what was just happening? I was in a recording room with Camila, and I was in a separate recording room with you, the clown, and you were both talking in my ears about how you couldn't hear the other person. So,
this is absolute. Camila,
can we talk about jobs? Sorry. And Dylan, you were eavesdropping that whole second half.
I was listening to everything. I was trying to really salvage the video, but we've just given up. You'll just have to trust that we're all awesome.
So what do you think about traveling alone, Dylan?
I wanted to say this was 20 minutes ago, I wanted to say that when I went to Argentina, that was my study abroad. You didn't study abroad, but you've been abroad. But still, that was my big awakening moment for like, oh, you don't have to be this hyper competitive, always like, can you imagine going into a class and not trying to get an A? Like no one at Brown could do that. And then I got to Argentina. Everything is pass fail there because it's just chill abroad. And I just had all this time to experiment, really get to know people. And I try to push away from my Brown friends and find
what's a scam?
Friends.
You know what's a scam? Maybe it's just me, but Brown has this open curriculum thing, pass fail, take everything pass fail, right? First of all, you go there, you really shouldn't do that. Second of all, in any class I took pass fail, I got an A. What's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't, you can't just like ask a bunch of high-wired, highfalutin students to do worse. It's like, I know this sounds just really obnoxious, but seriously, like, it's not as open and like pass fail and like wishy-washy as it's made out to be.
Yeah, I agree. Although I did succeed in that senior year. My last 2 requirements for my bio SCB were physics, and I took them pass fail, and I knew that I was taking them pass fail. And like, yes, I tried, but also not that much.
Yeah.
But that's senior year. I mean, I agree. In every other class I took pass fail, I ended up getting an A. Like,
yeah, it's I mean, for me, yeah, sure, you can't undo that wiring because it was 18 years, 20 years of just coding it into your mind. But I did from there take pretty much every class pass fail, so I just had more freedom to not stress about stuff. So you still, all right, I did hear most of it, maybe some stuff cut out, who knows, but we didn't talk about, Camille, why you started going into the consulting world, kind of the paved path as we
the present.
So what put you there? Were there pressures from school, family? Why did you think you had to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, I'd say just like pressure, and it wasn't family, I guess kind of school. So basically I remember as a junior knowing some seniors who were going through the consulting process. And I was always like, oh, that sucks. Like, thank God I don't ever have to do that. I'm a bio major. Like, I'm not like, ooh, that really sucks. So summer before senior year came around, and I guess I wasn't necessarily feeling like anxiety that I can point to, but I was kind of just like, well, I really don't know what I want to do. And I mean, that's still true. So basically, like, little background on this, although I could probably go into it forever. From like 7th grade to freshman year of college, I was 100% sure I wanted to be a doctor. I was like pre-med, like, I'm going to med school. Like, I love it. Like, I even shadowed doctors in high school. My mom was a doctor. I loved it. Like, and I did. And I thought I did. Like, what I had experienced of it, I loved, and I liked the idea and all that. So I get to Brown, and I'm going to major in bio. I'm going to be pre-med. And then I started taking like these different kinds of bio classes, and also like end of high school, that's when I got my scuba certification. I went on that Outward Bound trip. I started really discovering a lot more like the outdoors and like my love for the outdoors. And I get to Brown, and I just, I have all these experiences and classes. I ended up joining a marine bio lab, which honestly I attribute to the fact that I like getting to Providence. I was just like really missing the ocean and like outdoors. And I loved scuba diving. I loved all these things. And I was like, I really want to feel closer to that. So I joined this lab. And, one thing after another, I like found myself taking classes both that were like kind of more geared towards like medicine side of biology. So I did a lot of like cellular, molecular kind of stuff. And then I was also taking a lot of like ecology, science, like ecology and more like marine science oriented classes. And I loved both of them. Like, I was enjoying what I was learning, all that. But I didn't necessarily, I felt like, especially as a bio major, you're pretty much around people who are pre-med, like a lot. Like you say you're majoring in bio, the assumption is that you're pre-med.
Yeah.
And if you're not, like the people I worked with in my marine science lab all wanted to get their PhDs, like go to grad school, get a PhD in, marine science, ecology, whatnot. And so those are like the two paths that I was really around. It was like med school or grad school to get your PhD. Mm-hmm. And those right away didn't necessarily appeal to me. I was like, maybe, but I'm not sure yet. Like, I just felt like I wasn't ready to kind of do either route. And like, I had this cool research experience and I loved it, but I was like, I don't know if like academia and like research is necessarily for me, like working in a lab. So, and one thing I will say about Brown is like, as much as I really value and enjoyed my education there, like, honestly, I kind of felt like without, obviously no one ever said this, but it was kind of like, if you're a bio major, like you're either going to go to med school, you're going to go get your PhD, or like here, do consulting for a while and like figure it out. And so that kind of got to me. Like, I don't know, I never met anyone who was like wanted to be a nurse or wanted to, I don't know, become like a science writer. I mean, maybe there were those people. I personally never really met them. I didn't feel like they were the majority, at least. And I just kind of I guess I let that get to me without even really realizing, and was like, well, since I'm not going to pay a bunch of money to go to grad school and like commit all my time, I guess I'll just like apply for these consulting jobs. So that's kind of what I did. And I ended up going through that whole process, and I started at this consulting firm I'm at in last October, 2019. And I'm leaving this October, 2020. Because I quickly realized that I did it, I think, I don't even want to say for the wrong reasons. I don't necessarily regret it. I think that my whole thing was like, I wanted to explore. Like, I still wasn't done. I hadn't decided. And so I explored the corporate world, and like, that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't really have regrets. I think I quickly realized that this was not for me.
Which is cool, because you did it, you committed to doing it. And you just figured out like, oh, okay, that's not something I like. But instead of going on and doing that for 8 more years, you're like, okay, time to move on. What exactly do you do? I don't even like know what a consultant does every single day. So do you have clients you work for?
Yeah. So I actually work in government consulting. So I was living in DC, and then I guess like quarantine and everything, I just came back down to Miami. So I just ended up moving here for now. But yeah, I was in DC. I was so basically I work with government agencies, and like we do projects with them. It's like really, it's like very hard to, I didn't really understand what I was going to be doing until I got there and started doing it.
Can I jump in? That's so funny to me, because there are few resources of like, oh, this is exactly what this job entails, and this is what the life of XYZ consultant is, or whatever it is. And so it's a crapshoot. It's just like, oh, a lot of people are doing it. It must make sense to do.
Yep.
I'll just do it. And we're used to, tomorrow maybe you should listen to that too. You'll probably like it. Excellent Sheep. Have you read that book, Camila?
No.
Oh, that's a good one if you want some.
You'll get a lot of confirmation. But yeah, see, all me and Dylan do is read things that give us this awesome confirmation bias, so that we can feel fulfilled in who we are.
But it is saying how people, whatever, I think it's 50% of people from these elite schools go to finance or consulting. Yeah. And it's funny because no one comes in wanting to do that. Like, you're the outdoorsy person that wants to do some sort of biology. I don't know. Well, you'll see in the Bahamas as you explore that in a bit. But I do think that it's just like low risk in the sense that it still keeps the doors open. Like, whatever you do a year, you realize it's not for you, you can still back out. So that's why we're not completely against exploring, experimenting, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does October 2020 bring?
Yeah. So
if you know.
Yeah, no, I do actually. So basically, October 2020, I'll be leaving my corporate job, and I'm going for 6 months. I've decided to take this volunteer internship in the Bahamas at the Bimini Shark Lab. And I will be.
Come?
What?
Can I come?
Yeah, come along. Actually, they say if you have visitors, you can like schedule a boat for them for a day and like can go out and show them.
Oh, Dylan, we're going scuba diving. We are going
drown.
Scuba diving.
Yeah, so I'm honestly really excited. I think it'll be a really cool experience. I have a really good friend who actually did it. Like she did it a couple years ago, and really just like loved it. And the funny thing is like sometimes when I tell people that I'm doing this, they're like, "Oh, yeah, that makes so much sense. Like I always saw you doing like marine bio research as a career." And I'm like, "Okay, well, like that's cool." And like, I guess maybe, but like it's kind of going back to like just because I'm doing this doesn't mean that this is going to be my career. Like I'm still undecided. Like I'm still exploring. I feel like there were just like all these dreams I had as like a younger, I mean, yeah, I wanted to be a doctor for a long time, but I don't know. I always just, there are all these little things that I always kind of wanted to do. Like I was like, it would be cool to work as a dive master instructor on a boat for a year, or it would be cool to be like a backpacking trip leader or, and it's kind of just like, why not? Like, I'm just going to do it now. And so I'm going to go have this awesome experience. And like, maybe I decide I want to go into it and maybe I decide I don't. But it's just funny how so many people jump to like, oh yeah. And then like, you'll go to grad school for it. And I'm like, no.
Dylan and I came up with
everything's the resume.
Dylan, do you want to quickly talk about the hot and cold game analogy we came up with and why like that's exactly what Camila's doing right now?
Yeah, so this post, we talk about a lot. I have a lot of posts that are almost done.
You didn't ever write it.
This one was about how finding your purpose in life, it's this game of hot and cold. And I don't know if you played it as a kid of like, oh, warmer, 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 cold, cold. And it's just, I mean, in this analogy, you're blindfolded, so you really don't know like where your purpose is in the room. And so it's just you trying to get as many different signals as you can, because that helps you hone in on why you're here. Why are you on Earth trying to
and the only way you get feedback from a spectator saying hot or cold, or in this case just life, is by traveling in that direction, by taking a step towards that side of the room where something's hidden or whatever. And so to me it sounds like you've done your consulting stint, you took a step into that world and it was freezing cold. Maybe not, but I'm sure you also learned a whole bunch of things there. Now you're going to walk to the other side of the room, or the other side of the world in this case, and take a 6-month stint doing something else. And maybe that's a bit warmer. Maybe it's burning hot. Like you don't know that yet. But you can, I feel like the people that find their purpose or their reason for being in their late 20s are those that just like did and walked around, because then their sample size of hot and cold things, of data, is large enough that they can actually figure out like what they're really good at.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see you doing that in real time.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree. I really like that hot and cold like analogy. I always say this. It's like, to be honest, the coolest people, and by people I mean like older adults that I have talked to, like the ones that have the coolest jobs and have done the coolest things that I personally look up to, are the ones that you, like when you ask them about how they got to where they are, they never had a direct path. Like there's this one guy, he's like really cool. He was a National Geographic explorer. Like his work was on the cover, and he does like underwater archaeology, studying like blue holes in the Bahamas. Really cool guy. And I got to talk to him. He's like, he works at University of Miami. He's like a family friend. And I asked him about like, you know, where he went to school. I don't know. I was asking about his background. He was like, oh, you go to Brown. Yeah, I actually went there for a semester, but I didn't really like it. It was too cold. Like, he's like, I was a C student. Like, I graduated, like, whenever I graduated, I worked as like a boat captain for a while. I like tried all these different schools I didn't really like. And now he's like on the cover of National Geographic. So I don't know. I always think about that too. Like, the coolest people you meet kind of had, and not that I'm like trying to be like, oh, I need to be like cool like them, but it's just kind of what naturally is happening. And like going back kind of to the whole, like, I don't know, there's something I really like. Have you guys heard of like the be, do, have method?
No.
So this is something, because I'm also actually getting my certification in health coaching right now because that's like a little side jam, one of my like passion exploration things that I like. But in my course, we learned, this woman came to talk and she explained something called the be, do, have method. So most people in, I don't know, we could talk about like people we surround ourselves with, go by the do, have, be. So they think that they have to do something. So take for example, work a job that they're unhappy in. They have to do it so that they can have something, like whether that's money or status or whatever, so that hopefully one day they will be who they want to be, what they want to be. So the way you spin that is, what you want to do is be, do, have. So you be who you want to be, who you are, discover who that is, which I feel like is like still kind of what I'm doing. Then you do, then you discover it and you do it and you do what you're passionate about. And then you have, because it just comes naturally.
That is freaking cool.
Yeah.
I'm so upset right now, Camila. I know you have to go like at 2. This is really frustrating. We had the same thing with MC where we get to all this juicy stuff and then
we have it's just like it takes some time to warm up, you know?
No, it wasn't taking time to warm up. It was taking time for Dylan to sort his life out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Camila, can we... I do want to do, I guess, a part 3 at this point. I don't know. I'm going to do some editing magic, but I really want to get more in depth with one, that Nat Geo friend or just person that you met. Like, that's insane. I love that. I love this new method. Is there a book for the, I guess, the be, do, have version?
There's a website. I think you can, it's like some guy made it. It's like the be, do, have method or something.
All right. Camila, I know you have to go. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're patient with us, but we do need to have a part 3 at some point. Once I get a working
I would
laptop.
love to. Just let me know. This is fun.
We just have fun. That's all it is.
It's all nonsense, a little bit of smarts and maybe some wisdom. Thank you for bringing a new perspective, a new method. Now I have to explore that, and maybe we can debrief that whole method in more depth next time.
Well, for sure. Let's
Thank you, Camila.
We'll do it again.
All right. Well, we're signing off now, Camila, until another time.
All right.
There it is.